Hello everyone, welcome back to our family chat room.
This is Coco,
Alex, Zoey.
Alex, you look upset. What happened at school?
During today's class break, a classmate sharing table with me spilled his water bottle. So I quickly grabbed a pack of paper towels from the public table to help him dry up. We forgot to put the tissue back into the place after we finished wiping. Later, when the class leader couldn't find her tissue but discovered it on our desk and assumed we were the ones who stole it. We explained, but the teacher didn't believe us and still scolded us. The teacher claims to be fair, but he is clearly biased in her favor.
This is aggravating. She forgot where to put things, but to blame you guys. You are helping others though.
The teacher could have figured it out. The class leader is also a human. She might get it wrong. I hope I will not be taught by that teacher in the future. I don't want to trust the teacher afterwards, saying one thing and doing another.
This injustice is really a minified version of society. For example, the Tai Ji Men force case, which we are continuing to follow, lacks the element of truth, respect, and human rights. And human rights breaches like this are constantly occurring in all corners of Taiwan. I wonder, despite the Taiwanese government's repeated stress on democracy, yet still procrastinating in redressing human rights violation cases. Is it due to the ruling team's concealment of crime or disinterest of those in power?
During these years, we have been able to appreciate the international importance of the UN and what can be achieved with the UN bodies in the defense of human rights. Over the past 4 years at the UN, with the help of the organization present here at this conference today, we have repeatedly denounced the discrimination against minorities around the world. We have brought to the attention of the UN the discrimination of religious minorities in China, such as those suffered by the Uyghurs, a member of Falun Gong, and more particularly the dramatic case of the member of the Church of the Almighty God. Session after session of the Human Rights Council, we organized conferences, made written and oral statements, we held meetings with the state delegation, during which the victims were able to make their voice heard. In June 2021, we brought to attention to the UN Human Rights Council the case of the Tai Ji Men and the injustice they suffer in Taiwan. At this Human Rights Council, we denounced how the tax weapon was used to harm Tai Ji Men. In this statement, we enlightened and denounced the unscrupulous means used by the Taiwanese government in its attempt to destroy the Tai Ji Men movement. The use of tax weapons against spiritual minorities is unfortunately common practices in many countries, including France, which finally, after a struggle to denounce this injustice practice, was condemned by the European Court of Human Rights. In September, at the 88th Human Rights Council session, we renewed our appeal for Tai Ji Men. This time, we enlightened the confiscation of this Tai Ji Men place of worship by the Taiwanese government. This is another form of discrimination, just as serious, because the spiritual community cannot exist without a place of worship. Today, the situation of the Tai Ji Men can no longer be ignored in the world, and the Taiwanese government must allow the Tai Ji Men to enjoy their property, their place of worship, and to make their contribution to world peace without worry. The UN mechanisms allow civil society to participate in the improvement of our society, and it is important to continue to speak out against the unfair treatment of Tai Ji Men by the Taiwanese government. In 2009, Taiwan ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The ICCPR guarantees fundamental rights for every citizen, as well as freedom of religion or belief. The signing of the International Covenant is of paramount importance, but there is still a step to be taken to implement and respect the commitments made when the Covenant was ratified. The model proposed by the United Nations is a balance between these institutions, the member state, and civil society. In these three components that ensure that the fundamental purposes established in 1945 by the Charter remain at the heart of the United Nations. Taiwan, like all other states, must find this balance with civil society and grow with it, not against it. It is in fact the struggle of the Tai Ji Men that we support so that justice is done to them, so that their contribution to a better, peaceful, and harmonious Taiwanese society is recognized. Thank you for your attention.
Taiwan's government should set a more precise objective for itself and assess what bottlenecks to prioritize and solve in order to achieve it successfully. Taiwan, for example, wishes to pave the way for its international standing, to make connections, to be comparable to other advanced countries in many aspects, and to have a high degree of mutual exchange. The key is to raise the level of Taiwan's soft power first. However, the current orientation appears to function in a dictatorial approach, safeguarding the interests of a few officials, while failing to defend the justice and rights of general population. The formulation and implementation of policies concern the whole Taiwanese population, not simply the ruler's stay or leave.
Yes, in soccer game, if I'm not strong enough in defense, I will not insist on being a goalie.
Look with your heart. You will notice that the people's voice and activities are genuine, and the proposals are highly constructive. It's hoped that those who are granted power would learn to cherish the resources at hand and make excellent use of them, and to look far into the future, so that they will not regret it when it gets too late. Opportunities await those who are ready.
Why is the government so indifferent when so many people see the crux of the problem? Do they truly believe that such evasion and failure to address human rights violations will not erode public faith in the government?
Well, why do you think that teacher didn't listen to your explanation?
Maybe he's opinionated, or he wants to show his power to dominate others, or he thinks this tiny issue won't affect how others perceive him. But Mom, let me tell you secretly. The entire grade is aware of this, and he is now called Muggle. And then everyone comes back to talk to their parents. And the parents talk to each other in the group. Will there be a day when a principal or other schools oops.
Oops. Many people wonder, can we live on democracy? Absolutely. If I were a foreign investor, I would have done an extensive research before investing. If I discovered that the backward tax suppression still exists in Taiwan, especially if it's the government to tackle with, it would undoubtedly be a direct threat to my business. There's no need to take such risks, as there had been lessons in the past.
Just like the class with the horrible teacher that no one wants to be in.
They have been taught never to compromise, whatever the price to pay. Integrity, dignity, respect, compassion, love, and peace are at the heart of their values and of their lives. But some people and institutions have shamelessly violated their human rights to justice. The dizi are the best ambassadors of Tai Ji Men's teachings to the outside world because they are the living testimonies that their spiritual values can regenerate individuals and society. This is a major contribution of Tai Ji Men to the spread of human rights in Taiwan. This is also a precious asset for the Taiwanese society and the image of the country abroad. But the National Taxation Bureau and its ally, Prosecutor Hu, nicknamed the Judicial Rambo, stubbornly remain deaf to their call for justice.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate the group Bitter Winter being a co-sponsor of the summit, and the author, Professor Massimo, that wrote about what you have experienced and taking place in Taiwan. And he's been he's a great investigator in looking at things and then highlighting and showcasing that what's taking place. The charter that we put forward for this summit is a broad-based charter for all faiths or people of no faith at all, but it's about protecting that right of freedom of belief or conscience, freedom of religion. And that this is a fundamental human right, it is a cornerstone human right, and without which you cannot have human flourishing, because we each have this desire to realize our fondest looking forward to what we think the future has to hold, what we think life after here looks to hold. And we have this pursuit that's in us, it's innate to being a person. And we have the dignity of a person to be able to choose whatever that future looks like for ourselves and not have it be forced or coerced by anybody else or by a government. And particularly we pick on the issue of governments because we believe government's role is to protect that innate right of a person to select their own course or future for their soul, whatever that may be. And there'll be a lot of disagreement amongst people about, well, I agree with this person but not this, on what you think it looks like for you to have a freedom of religion or a freedom for your soul. But what the government should do is to protect that right to peacefully practice your faith as you see fit. As long as you're peaceful about it, then you have the right to do that. And if governments don't do that, we're going to have greater conflicts, we're going to have much more difficulty, and we won't have the human flourishing that's part of the pursuit of the soul for the eternal, the pursuit of the divine.
Look, experts and scholars from home and abroad are vigorously appealing to the government for vindication, and they are expressing themselves rationally and logically, as if they're in a conference without yelling or violence.
Volunteers carrying banners and distributing flyers for human rights are honest, conveying their demands. Among them there are grandpas, grandmas, and children like us. And surprisingly, they are not even affected by the weather. Whether it's super duper hot, chilly, or wet.
True, it's never done with the intention of hurling insults or garner population. There are folks who are trying to make a living and have families to support. Regardless of how upset they are, they choose to express themselves in a calm and sensible manner. This requires sufficient sense and perseverance.
Well, the whole story makes it hard not to get angry. I have no idea. How did they did it?
There were over 1,500 public sessions according to the web forum, and each was computed for 30 minutes, which was comparable to more than a month of non-stop day and night relay marathon. Not to mention the time spent standing on the street. That's definitely a huge social cost. But do you guys notice that? There's no violence of any kind. Only the continuous outpouring medicine called love. For those who use illegal means to take other people's assets to satisfy themselves, psychologically speaking, because of a lack of love that leads to high material desires to fill their dissatisfaction of the inner child.
Poor thing. It's even more pathetic that Taiwan has been screwed around for so long by such mentally ill people.
What kind of effective communication or stronger motivation is required for the government to fix this seemingly perfect but actually malfunctioning mechanism? The National Taxation Bureau should also take the advice, analyze the merits and downsides of unlawful overtaxation, and change the one-sided cognitive bias of using authoritative, high-handed taxation. And the more the better, which resulted in Taiwan's hollowing out. We all recognize Taiwan government's effort toward democracy, hoping to be able to preserve the worldwide image as Asia's democracy leader. More because that democracy is not easily achieved. It is vital to strengthen, deepen, and consolidate every link in order to keep it. Both the government and the citizens are the building blocks that make up the big shape.
Mom, this is like building a Lego model. When the model is tiny, the absence of the interior structure is not noticeable. But as I develop larger and larger scales, it is likely to collapse due to structural instability in a certain spot. There is an old saying, for want of a nail, a kingdom was lost.
What a fantastic analogy! Life is full of choices, big and small, and we're accountable for our own decisions, and our numerous choices will gradually accumulate to make us who we are. The idea also applies to the government. Taiwan has to have and display the same attributes or behaviors in the international arena, whether it is the people or the government. When we consider the overall quality of individuals we encounter when visiting a country, even little discrepancies become apparent. Human rights are profoundly rooted in Europe and the US, and their practice and mindsets are all founded on this principle. Mommy also got a strong impression of respect from my past experience living overseas. In the speech at the UN Human Rights Day, Dr. Hong Daozi, the Grandmaster of Tai Ji Men, mentioned how human rights may lead to more than simply what we generally think of in today's chaotic scenario, bringing out profound insights and practical implications. I couldn't agree with him more. Let's watch it.
Distinguished guests, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good day. The UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10, 1948, and 2 years later declared December 10th the Human Rights Day. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is based upon human liberty and equality, and the first document in history that details 30 fundamental human rights. It is also the most widely translated document, available in more than 500 languages. Human rights is a universal value that has been recognized as the foundation of freedom, justice, peace, and security, as well as of the sustainable development of human society. Inspired by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the United Nations adopted the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in 1966. To further clarify and act upon the spirit of human rights, the two covenants and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights combined into the International Bill of Human Rights, the most important human rights bill in the world, and the very foundation of international human rights law. On this important day, we are once again reminded that every human being is endowed with fundamental human rights. No person or public power should infringe or deprive others of their basic human rights. These rights should be respected, protected, and jointly defended. American human rights activist Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said human rights violations harm us all. Only when human rights are recognized and honored will peace be achieved. Respect for human rights is the common linkage between democratic nations. However, fundamental human rights are violated in many parts of the world. Human rights defenders, following the calling of conscience, are taking to the street and demanding that public authorities respect and protect citizens' civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. The calling of human rights is heard. Everyone is urged to take immediate action for the future of their country. Human rights are at the core of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable development cannot be achieved without human dignity. We have to create equal opportunities in order to achieve sustainable goals. We are determined to take actions to protect human rights and remain united as we recover from the pandemic and go beyond into a brighter future. The United Nations is calling on world citizens to stand up for human rights and put human rights in the center of the post-pandemic world, urging social reforms to create an international community built upon freedom and fearlessness with more inclusiveness, resilience, and equality. The world is now full of uncertainties and challenges. Global problems such as war, environmental changes, extreme climate patterns, excessive exploitations of resources, and unequal distribution have provoked the COVID-19 pandemic and Mother Nature to fight back, causing unpredictable and devastating disasters for mankind. In the chaos, human rights are under immediate threat from special interests and corrupt government bureaucracy. The chaos stems from the same root. Michelle Bachelet, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, said there is a vaccine to hunger, poverty, inequality, and possibly, if it is taken seriously, to climate change, as well as to many of other ills that face humanity. The name of that vaccine is human rights. We should properly apply the human rights vaccine to help us build more resilient, prosperous, and inclusive societies. Our common humanity is rooted in human rights, equality, justice, and freedom. These core values need to be reiterated, heard, put into practice. Then the human society will be able to avoid violence and achieve stability and peace. Under the doctrine of cause and effect, just like the rule of heaven and earth, wrongdoers will eventually bear the consequence. To find solutions, it is necessary to go back to the root cause of the problem and change the root cause. Heart is the root cause of our problems. Selfishness causes people to forget the respect between people. True human rights attainment requires basic respect among people. There will be no peace, equality, democracy, and fraternity with no human rights. Human rights comes from conscience. Conscience is the origin of all virtues. Compassion is the footing of morality. Human rights is based upon conscience and love. Humanity is connected with compassion. French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau said a principle of justice and virtue exists in the depth of soul. This is conscience. In recognition that conscience is the key to change the world, the UN General Assembly declared April 5th the International Day of Conscience in 2019. In recognition that love and peace is the most important foundation for sustainable development and mankind's common well-beings, the Federation of World Peace and Love promoted the declaration of International Day of Conscience to urge people to seek win-win solutions with peace and harmony in order to solve national and international crises. All world citizens are encouraged to nurture love in their hearts, to strike a balance in the pursuit of economic, social, cultural, spiritual, technological, and educational development. Conscience is the most needed universal vaccine. On Human Rights Day, we look forward to working with states, organizations, and world citizens to protect, promote, and practice human rights as we meet challenges with creative and effective solutions. On the path to securing universal human rights, we need to have faith, merit, strength, and courage to overcome obstacles as we work hand in hand with like-minded, and to continue the work of securing a human rights-friendly environment. We need to focus on the collective well-being inherent to our conscience. Let's create sustainability and a united world with human rights, dignity, peace, equality, freedom, stability, and happiness. May we all have peace and health. May the world have prosperity and harmony.
We share the same air, water, and land, and our destinies are bound together. I hope the government makes a smart choice for us, while we still have one. And I know there is nothing that can stop a person who wants to change. However, if a person refuses to adapt, there is nothing that can make him improve. When I mistakenly offend a classmate, it's like a mirror reflecting back to me that I may have crossed the line. But I can own my faults and make changes right away, so I can still be good friends with my classmates.
I appreciate the examples of inference you both gave. The destiny of all humanity depends on solidarity in immediate act. The suffering of today is a precious lesson, and the government should not miss what the crisis mirror is teaching us. Leaders hold positions of great authority. Their vision and pattern, as well as the integrity of their ruling team, will eventually determine the fate of the country. We very much expect those in power stay humble, have the ability to awaken, be a big picture thinker, and break all rules of thinking, act globally, and never compromise on our future.
Everybody please come join us. Change it and shape your future. High five.
Thanks for being with us today. I'm Coco.
This is Alex.
And I'm Zoey.
Until next time.
Bye
for now.